Hello everyone, hope you are all doing good. My name is Praveen. In this video, I would like to explain about DevOps continuous integration and deployment with an example. Hope you are all can see my screen. The main agenda of today's recording is to explain about overview of Git, GitHub and GitHub Actions. Along with that, a small example of creation Angular project, how I got automated with DevOps pipeline and deploy it to the live environment. And what we are expecting in a sprint 3 submission, okay, for DevOps integration in your own project. To start with Git is a version control management system which can track your changes of it, okay. If we wanted to create a new GitHub repository, then you can use the git command with the git init and git add. These commands are helpful to create your own repository from your local. Or else, if you have your own repository in our GitHub, you wanted to clone it into your local, clone those file changes, means copying that code changes into your local. You can use this git clone followed with that HTTP URL. Okay. When you set up your code in your local environment, then you made some changes of it. You can make some changes of it. Like if you made 10 changes, you wanted to push only 2 changes out of 10, then you need to add those 2 changes to Git stage. Git staging means separating your required changes from your all the changes. Then when after you separated the changes with this git stage command, then you need to commit it. Commit the 2 changes which you required. When you commit the changes, your files are in your local only. It will create a zip folder, like it's a zip folder of it. It's like a commit message it got created. Until you push to that server, it's in our local. Until you push the code changes to your server, it won't appear to your co-developers or any other, it won't reflect in our remote repository until you push it. Before you pushing your changes, when you wanted to roll back your changes, getting your system to a previous commit version, then you can use this git reset. This commit is reverted. Or else, if you push your changes to the source branch, you wanted to roll back your changes because of some errors or wrong code commit or anything that might be reason. Then you can use git revert command to roll back your changes to your local. Then all your changes will saw in the git stage session. Then you can okay add it into the commit message or anything. This will be iterated like that or delete it. And in GitHub, previously we discussed about the Git, and this GitHub is like a folder. It's a code management environment integrated with Git. It's like a folder that where we can add our project to it. And in a GitHub, we have that boards also, GitHub boards also, that where we can track our task or student works or a developer's work, anything. And in GitHub Action, I will clearly explain that GitHub Actions in a board. Okay. Actually, what is DevOps? DevOps, as you all know, that DevOps means continuous integration and continuous deployment. This DevOps pipeline consists of a planning step. It's like a GitHub boards that where we are creating our task and planning our sprint. And after planning to the work, we need to write code with a Visual Studio or code or Eclipse or anything. Then integrate our changes to Git version control with our GitHub board, GitHub repository. Once the coding part is done, we need to build our changes. It will find the errors in our code or compile our code, anything. Then after, we need to write some test cases and check it. Until that, this is in a continuous integration. Once our code is ready and ready to serve version is available, then we need to release our changes to the deployment environment. This deployment consists of different environments like test environment, development environment, pre-production or a production environment, and many things. And in a production, end user will access it and provide some code changes of it. Like if they observe any bugs or needed any additional functionalities, they can monitor it and create a new work items, and developer will code it. This cycle will continue. This whole process is called continuous integration and deployment. I will explain how you automate this to make it continuous. Okay, with an example. Okay, and this is the example pipeline how you can look. This is an example diagram with Azure DevOps. You can use GitHub Actions or Azure DevOps or AWS, anything. But all we need is when we commit our code from a developer and it will reflect in a live environment. Okay. Like in example, we are creating task in GitHub boards. When after a developer start working on it, adding their code changes, then committing or pushing the changes, committing and pushing the changes to the GitHub or Azure repo boards. In our course, we are adding our changes to the GitHub. Okay. When after a new commit got created in a master branch or a development branch or a main branch of it, it will automatically triggers a continuous integration pipeline. In the integration pipeline consists of getting our source code from the GitHub and installing the required code changes, building our code or compiling our code from our high level language to machine level language, and running our test cases and publishing that artifacts. Artifacts means we have many web servers like IAS server or Apache Tomcat, anything. These web servers cannot able to understand raw code, which is high level code. High level code might be in Python based code or a Java based, Node based, anything it might be. It's an Angular code or React code, which cannot be able to understand directly by the web server. So we need to compile our code and generate a minified version, which may be an intermediate level code, which is also called a disk code, anything it may be called, which can be mission understandable code. Then we need to deploy our code to the IAS server or Apache Tomcat, a web server. So that minified code is called as artifacts. We need to publish that artifact in a separate file. Like we have these artifacts. Once this pipeline is successful, which means they didn't face any of the issues in this one. Once it got succeeded, then release pipeline will trigger. It may be an automated trigger or manual trigger. Okay. Once it got triggered in a release pipeline, we will perform the continuous deployment and delivery of it. Deployment means when after we are publishing the artifacts, our changes will reflect in a live environment. If it's one environment, we can consider it as a simple deployment. Or else, if it consists of multiple stages, multiple deliverables, like a delivery for the developers or a QA team or user acceptance testing department or a production like an end user access, many things. This is the delivery session. Okay, which will use different web servers for different stages. Once after the dev team got completed, we need to provide a gate and approvals of it. After completion of the approvals, it will move to the QA environment and QA will start, quality assurance team will start testing of it by writing a manual test cases or manual testing or automation test cases of it. Then after, if no vulnerabilities got detected or any no bugs got detected, then we can ready to release our changes to the production. In a usual case, there might be a separate in between of this separate environment, which is called user acceptance testing, which is like developer implemented a code and quality assurance test the code. Then after it's passed, we will demonstrate our code to the business analyst or a client, okay, who give us a project. Once they got approved, they satisfied with our implementation, then they will approve it to the production environment. In the production environment, end users or customers will access our application, like what we made in the all the stages, okay. Majorly the source code we can access in server version. So in this stage, there are in a production, in a usual case, there are two parts, like in a staging part or a live production slots, which is commonly called as deployment slots. Like if we are implementing a banking application, we implemented a payment system in the banking application, and we faced a bug like when we sent $10, it was detecting $100 or something like that. We need to immediately revert the changes. In a usual cases, if its deployment slots are not available, then we need to down our servers. Then we made our changes according to that and reinitiate all this process. Until that, our application is in down stage. If it's a 2 hours or 3 hours in down stage, which cannot be accessible to the end user, it will be a lot of impact to our availability of our application. So they will maintain a ready to serve version, which is a previous working model of our code. Then we can swap it with a bug code with a bug free code. Swap the changes after successing our local environment, add it to the production environment, like that. Okay. I will explain all this with an example. So I will here I'm going to explain what we are expecting in a sprint 3 submission. Like consider you are all developers. Yeah, you are developing your project. And once after you are done with your sprint code or something, you are adding to your local branch, then creating your pull request to master branch. Once a scrum master or a team lead approves your changes, then this master branch your changes got triggered to the integrated to this master branch. This is the main branch of your project repository. Once a commit code created into the main branch, then you are demonstrating it in our local environment, right? As of now, in a sprint 3 submission, you need to push these changes into the live environment. When someone access, when a TA or a professor access with this live environment, your changes should be available. Okay. This is the mandatory deliverable. Okay. And we have optional deliverables also, which can you consider as a bonus for some point, which is for creating a environment for developers or a QA team and a production team. This is the optional deliverables. When a commit got created, when your code pushed to the main branch, at this time, you need to add your changes to the development environment, which can be accessible with your live environment URL, continued with some tag name called dev or develop or anything. It's a development environment. It is for developers purpose. Like you are working in an organization with a 14 days of sprint. At the 8th day, a new developer joined into our organization. They didn't set up their code, but they wanted to see our work. So at that time, we can demonstrate our 8 days or 9 days of changes to them in this environment. Once after the sprint is almost reached, then we can deliver our changes to the QA environment. Once after the code changes are completed with an approval, manager approval of it, or a team lead approval of it. And in a test, QA team will check the changes, and once it got working fine, then they will implement into the production. They will push the changes into the production. So this approval may be client approval or a manager's approval. This approval is mandatory because if we don't have an approval, then all our changes will continuously reflect into the different environment. So consider this approval in our submission if you are planning for a optional deliverable for a bonus points. Okay. So by coming to the demonstration of our work, okay, and here I used a Azure free trial account to create a web server. I have attached that free trial link, which you can create with your student mail ID without using any of credit card. You will get $100 free trial, which can be useful for 1 year of free trial. Okay. Please make sure to create a account with your college mail ID, a student mail ID. Okay. And to implement whole this process, how I approached this for continuous integration, deployment, and delivery. I'm going to explain with a Node.js application, which is also helpful for Node.js or Angular, React, or Express.js project, which you can, if your application is any of this, you can easily use this one for your project. If you are using a Java-based application or Python-based application or .NET-based application, I will provide you an insight that where can you update your code. And remaining part are all same. You can reuse it. And here I have attached a workflow which I created with a pipeline, with a ML pipeline. You can refer this one. I will upload this presentation PPT after completion of this video recording. Please refer this one. And some example how you can create a web server in a Azure cloud. You can use any of the cloud provider like Azure or AWS or GCP or Oracle Cloud or IBM, anything as your convenience. And it is not only a web apps, you can use anything. But all we need is when we create a commit into the main branch, it need to trigger the continuous integration and release pipelines, and your changes need to be reflected in a live environment. Okay. And by coming to the demonstration of this approach, and in my local, I created a project with the name of DevOps example project. And in your case, this is the name of my project, DevOps example project. And in your case, it's your project name, okay? And this is a empty project. I don't have any code changes except this one. For clearly demonstrating our changes, I was doing this. I'm running this in my local. I'm using ng-ser -open-o. This is the shortcut to run our application in our local, to run Angular application. Okay. If you are using a React application, it's npm start, like a python.py. Okay. Anything. Yeah. It run my application and shows in localhost. So you are demonstrating your changes in our local. This is in this stage. We need to move it to our production environment in a sprint 3 submission. So to make it done, so I was doing some code changes. Like I was changing this code. Good morning, student, to hello, students. Yeah. I'm saving my changes and reflect in my local environment. But yeah, in Azure portal, I have 3 web servers. This is my Azure website, Azure portal, which I created with my college mail ID for a free trial version. We have resource groups and app services. These 2 services we are concentrating on it. It's like a folder where we can store all our relative changes into a separate folder. It's a group of resources, just a folder. And in this folder, I created 3 web services, 3 web apps. One is for production and development and testing of it. When we check it, I'm opening this. Yeah, in the development, this is the sample dashboard, how it looks like. Your Azure portal, it consists of resource group information, whether my web server is running or not, and subscription details, and which project it got linked with, and where it's running. It's node-based application, right? So I was taking a node application. At the end of the video, I will explain by creating one web apps. Okay, how I got created, I will explain it. You can create it for your reference. Also, I have a link which I attached in our PPT, and all the information, basic information. This is the backend virtual IP that I'm running my system. Okay, I'm browsing with the development URL and in a reminding test also. Okay, yeah, that's good. This is my local host, and this is development. This is testing environment, and this is production. We can further reconfigure this name with a domain name server, DNS server. Like pursuing DNS domain name from a GoDaddy or any other website, you can add it to your Azure portal by adding here custom domains, which you can access with different URL. So in production, I didn't deploy my code to the production environment for demonstrating our changes. These are the previous code. Good morning, student. Now I modified these changes to hello, students. So yeah. So when I push my changes to remote repository, then it will automatically reflect changes in a development environment because I didn't create a approval for this URL. So it will automatically changes. And in a test and in a production, it won't be changes because I created a approval. I will explain the how I got created. And yeah, this is my GitHub. In a GitHub, I created a repository with the name of DevOps example project. It is your repository. You can add it your repository to the Azure portal. Okay. So in my repository, when I connected with Azure DevOps, it's automatically created GitHub workflows. In a workflow session, I have this workflow. When we integrated with Azure DevOps, it's automatically created, but which is not a runnable version. You need to modify many factors like, yeah, I will explain the uh, pipeline of this one. Like it consists of name of the pipeline, the purpose, which is the name, okay, and a trigger, which describes when we push our code into a master or a main branch, this pipeline will trigger. This is the condition. Until we made some changes to the main branch, our changes will not reflect in a live environment. Then here, this worker dispatch. This worker dispatch is like a approval. For providing an approval, I configure this worker dispatch. This will take a user input and controls our workflow. It's by default it's false. When we make it to the true, it's required. When we make it to the true, this pipeline will triggers and code got deployed into production. And similarly for the test case, this is for writing the test these conditions. I'm adding this condition in later of this pipeline. Here I specified that I need to run two jobs. One is for build. I mean, in this case, it's 4 jobs. One is for one build and deploy to the development, test, and production. Okay. This build will take care of entire continuous integration process. It will runs in Windows-based system and it uses a web job. Web jobs is like a small containers that can helpful for running our code. Like we need to have a runtime environment, like we need to have a CPU and a processor including of it. So GitHub will provide some actions which will help to run our code in GitHub environment. Those are all called as actions. I configured one workflow here. I mean a web job here, and in that job it will take whole the integration process. And in a sub job, it's helpful for setuping a node version. In a node, I use it 20 version because I created a application with node 20. Okay, I configured it. Then this continuous integration pipeline have a installing of our code and building it. This will install all the dependencies from the NuGet package manager npm. Okay, after installing all the packages, it will execute our code. It will build our code. It will compile all our high-level language to the mission understandable language, which can be understandable to the web browser when we deploy into the web browser. Okay. It will generate a artifacts, a minified file. Minified file consists of one for the CSS, one for HTML, one for packages, which packages that we are using, and all the information. The information is like this information. When I serve my project, it will build it, then it will run it. So when it's built it will generate vendor file, polyfill, styles, and a runtime and main application. So these are the files which are understandable with the browser. It will create it. This build command will create all these files. And these files will be added to the artifact section. We will specify the path that where we can pull these artifacts. Like in my local, in this session, I have these artifacts. I'm going to delete this one for demonstration purpose. ng build. When I build this, my code, a dist file is created with an artifacts. Okay. When I build my code in my local environment, it will create an minified files, which I configured in Angular JSON, which is pre-configured. Yes, these 4 files got created and elaborate to some more files like copying assets like images or any information or HTML information, some bundle generation files, everything. This dist got created again. And in a dist section, we have all these files like a icon of our application and HTML compiled minified version of our HTML file and generated this dist files. Okay. So we need to specify this dist file path to capture all this into our pipeline. So dist slash our project name. root directory. From a root directory, it's a disk/our application project name. Okay. It will create with your application name. And until that, we implemented a continuous integration. If we have any unit test cases or anything in your application that need to be checked, you can write it here. Like a npm test. Okay. And in a deployment part, we have multiple deliveries, right? One for the development. This is for the development environment. And this is for the testing environment. And this is for the production environment. If we have UAT, we can write up that as well. By going deeper into the one pipeline, it will run in Ubuntu mission. And it needs a build before deploying it into the development. Like if build got failed, what the use of deploying their changes to the development environment? We wanted to deploy it to right pipeline should be fails. So it telling that it need to be completed before deploying it. Build. This build need to be completed before. And environment we need to specify. Like in the just a namesake purpose, I used a develop and URL from the develop. So these environments are like in a real-time application, there are different databases for different environments. For a test or local environment, they use one database which uses local credentials or a local environment. And in a production stage, it uses different URL having different name, which is like a actual username and user passwords, everything. So different environment, we can add it into the environment variables, those details, like those URLs, connection string information or anything. And in deployment, this involves these steps. In a step 1, it will download the artifacts which are built in a continuous integration pipeline. It will download files from this file. And after downloading this, it will deploy those files, dist files into the web server. Okay. Here I use it DevOps example project -development, which is exact name we need to follow with the server name. So to uh, connect it like this one. Like we can see that DevOps example project -development. This is this one. Okay. And in that we have multiple slots. As we discussed previously, we have a swapping for one slots, right? Deployment slots we mentioned. Like deployment slots. We don't need to use it for the test or a development stage, only especially for the production. So deployment slot itself a production. We have production available for every web server. Then a deployment slot. We have this production version. It means in the terminology, it's like a live environment. Whatever the thing is mentioned in a production, it will trigger. Like in a developer production slot, we have selected. And connection to that Azure portal from GitHub. For every time when we are accessing the Azure portal, we are providing our username and password, right? It's not a case in a real-time environment. We need to connect it with a secret key or a token of it. So it will automatically, when we connect our GitHub with Azure DevOps portal, it will automatically create one secret in our repository. To check that, we need to go to the settings and scroll it to the down to the secret section in the GitHub Actions. Here, I have these three things got created. One for test environment, one for development and one for the production. 3 web servers. I have attached this code. We cannot able to see these secrets because these are secured information, right? Only once we can see, even though we created a new secret also. Is the name of that secret. This is in secret session, secrets dot this ID. Okay. That ID you need to specify in your pipeline. In your pipeline, you need to specify this here secrets dot that profile name, profile information. Similarly for this deployment also. To deploy your changes to your test environment, it need to be completed with development first. Once after the code got pushed to the development, then only this pipeline need to be triggered. Because only these changes need to be reflected in our test environment. Here, I have added a condition that in a worker dispatch session, if a deployment to test environment triggers with a true, then we can give an approval for this. This is the approval. Like in a environment in input dispatch session, deploy to test because it's a test environment. So it will takes this input, deploy to test input. And in a production, it will take this input. By default, it's false. When we provide true in a pipeline, when we're running at a time of running pipeline, we need to specify it's a true. This is here deploy. Deploy to the production. This is a deployment. Okay. Yeah. And I set this name as manual approval. You can name anything for your comfort. Because until I type a true in a pipeline, it won't trigger. This one and test environment are optional. We can use this develop as a production also, or skip this too and use a production as a mandatory deliverable. If we add all these things, it will be beneficial for your grades. Okay. Mainly to understand the concept. Okay. So after writing all this is echo is like a print statement, right? Which shows the output in our pipeline. I added this for debugging purpose. You can skip this one if you won't need it. So this is the example pipeline, how it looks like, okay? So, and in a pipeline, this pipeline is shows in the action section. This is the previous builds I have given with this code. And when I expand a pipeline, here, once after building code, when I provide a needs right, so it will automatically connects with, it will show us a diagram which connects with development environment. Once the development got succeeded, it will reflect changes to the test environment where QA team will, quality assurance team will check our code changes. Then it will move to the production environment. So only after the completion of develop, it will move to the test. Only after test, it will move to the production. These two have manual triggers that I will show it. So okay, I will demonstrate this code. Like in our local, I changed my code to hello student from good morning student. Okay. I'm pushing this code changes to the main branch, which is this branch. Then this pipeline will trigger because in a pipeline we mentioned that on push to the master branch, right? Yeah. So I'm going to the Visual Studio. To push your changes, you can use command line interface or else GUI, graphical user interface. And in a changes session, I have one file change, which is like I changed this label, name changes. Like in case in an example that I have other changes also. Like in a changes section in a source control, I have two files. One is this one and other one. If we wanted to change some particular piece of code from our all local changes, you need to stage this one. As I previously mentioned the staging concept, right? When I stage this one, only required changes are pushed to the server and remaining changes are in our local. If we wanted to save the changes for your future purpose, like if you are working in a project, in a code change, in a task, and at the middle of your project development, there is a production bug or any high priority work got assigned to you by your team lead. You don't want to lose all your changes that you made into related to the task. So at that time, you don't need to uh, revert these changes, like undo your changes and re-implement the changes. You can alternatively you can stash the changes. Stash means creating a backup. Like when we create a stash, it will create a backup. Then after you can apply, when after completing the high priority task, you can go back to the stashes and apply the stash or delete the stash if we need it. Okay. So I don't want to stash my changes now. I'm just pushing this for CI/CD demonstration. Like provide a meaningful commit name. Okay. To to track your changes in a I just added some random name. This name will reflect in commit and my pipeline got triggered. I'm directly pushing my code changes to the main branch here. For your case, you need to create one separate branch and integrate all your changes. Then you need to create a pull request or merge request to the main branch. I just pushing my changes directly to demonstrate it quickly. I'm adding my changes. Then, yes, my commit got created, updated title in UI project, which is just now it's got created. And a pipeline got started triggering. And in here, we can check it here or else directly go to the action section. And in the actions, my pipeline got triggered because my code changes are added to the main branch. So when we inspect the pipeline, it started building. When we go to the build pipeline, it will set up the Node.js. It will set up the pipeline and set up the node runtime environment. And after that, it will execute the command run npm install. It will install all the required packages. It will installing all the packages into that web job. Then after, yes, install the required packages and build it. And in a build session, we can look into that. These 4 files got created, these artifacts, and deploying that artifacts into this web job. Okay. Once the job it got completed, then it started deployment pipeline. Until it's complete, until build is succeeded, it won't be start. Similarly, for the remaining pipelines also. Yes, it's got succeeded. Similarly, it's got deployed into the this environment, which is HTTPS DevOps example project hyphen development. This is that one. Here, when I refresh this one, my changes got automatically reflect. I just committed it and then after it's got automatically modified. Yes, it's modified to Hello Student, which means my changes are automated. I didn't given any approval. We are in this stage now. We are added our changes to this one and we don't have any approval. My changes are accessible with -develop or dev URL. Then until I provide an approval for this one, my changes will not reflect to this test or production environment. Okay. And this is the test environment. Even when I refresh it, my changes will not reflect and my code got not pushed to the production environment. Okay. And here, because this job is skipped because I didn't provide any approvals. To provide an approval, once after my changes got working fine in development environment, I need to provide an approval for this one. For this, I need to go actions, and in pipeline, here we can workflow has dispatch event, which means a manual event trigger. And in here, in this part, select the branch that you wanted to deploy it. And by default, it's false. When we mention it's to true, my changes will reflect. When I mention it's true, I'm specifying this as false only, just changing it to the true. Then my changes will recur to the test branch, but production will remain the same. Yeah, new pipeline got triggered. It will build it again before deploying it to the test. If we write it in a separate file, then this build will be skipped. Here my node setup is not here my node is not downloaded again. It found in a cache because previously I copied all the things from server from the node website to the web chunk. So it reuse it then to fasten the process. My build is completed and deployment pipeline already started. Yeah, it's completed. And we can notice that one more pipeline is also started, which is test, because we given approval for this one, like a true, we mentioned that, right? So because of this, it's got started. But production is not started, not going to start, because we mention it as false by default. Once after the pipeline is completed, when we refresh this one, our changes will reflect. Yes, this pipeline is completed and our changes will reflect with the follow student, but production remains same. Similarly, I'm applying this for production also. To make it done, again, same process, go to the actions and workflows. In a run workflow, we need to specify this as true, but we need to also make it as true, because after completion of the development test stage only, we are specifying our needs in a develop production. So we are mentioning needs in a production pipeline that complete this test. So we need to mention true or true and click on run. It means our test environment is working fine with a quality assurance team, Azure with the quality assurance team. Then after our code is ready to deploy into the production environment. Then we need to pass all the steps again and deploy changes to the production. In an alternative case, we can also do a process like this is the approach I followed. When I integrate my code changes to the main branch, this will triggers. This develop and test environment and production environment will triggered. In other case, in an alternative case, we can create three separate branches. One is for development, testing, and main branch. When our code changes got triggered into the develop branch, then this deployment pipeline will triggers. Like in a on changes, we need to specify in a workflow. We need to specify as a develop or test or main branch to make all the process again. Okay, that's up to you. Okay, your project needs. Here we can notice that production environment also triggered and it's successfully completed without any failures. So when I refresh my production application, it's triggered. Then my changes are added from my local to develop, test, and production environment as well. So this is continuous integration, deployment, and delivery. And here I would like to add one more thing for the demonstration called deployment slots. What is deployment slots? In the production side, I created, I changed this free trial to the paid version. I mean, free version to the paid version by upscaling it. In a deployment session, I added one more slot, which is named with staging. One more name with staging. And I choose the previous version from this one. Based on this one, I need to create this one like that. And after creating that, I have a ready to serve version available to swap with the production. So I can maintain the work traffic also. I can split the work, user request with these two branches. This is specified as production. So this lot is running in live environment with the name of hello students. Okay. I have also available with ready to serve version. So I'm going to swap these two changes. Like I wanted to roll back my changes with a zero downtime, which is zero downtime actually. And when I click on swap, so source branch is like staging and target is our production environment. So changing my local changes with, previous ready to serve available version, backup version with live production environment to roll back our changes to maintain zero downtime swapping. Yes, it's swapped. At this moment, whatever the things I already provided a backup, that will reflect, not a default page. Here, when I refresh a production slot, it will move back to the previous stored version. It's a good morning stored. Okay, this is how we can perform continuous integration and deployment. Yeah, to create a web server, how you need to follow is create a resource, and here search for resource group, or else go to this resource group section. Create a resource group like test underscore sc underscore project. Any name of it. It's like your project name you need to specify. Your project name you need to specify it here. All the resources which you created, create under it to this one. It's created. Okay. Resource group is created. Now I am creating resources under to this resource group. Like go to app services and create. You have multiple options available here, like adding a web apps or a static apps, or a web apps with a database, or a WordPress application. Static apps is like integrating a basic HTML and JavaScript code. Web apps is for adding our framework application, like uh, .NET framework, or a React or Node application, or Python application, Java application, anything. So we are in this stage. We need to implement this one. Web app, first option. The first option, I have only one subscription available, which is called Azure for Students. I created with my college mail ID, and I need to select the resource group. So resource group is SC project. If you haven't created the resource group, you can also create it here with the name of it, and instance, and you are SC project. Provide any valid name, which is usually your project name. Whatever the name you provided over here, you can able to access with that name, with this extension, as a website.net extension, like this one. Follow with this extension, URL name. So make sure to use your project name. And in a code, you can add your code into the web server with different options available. You can use a code, direct code, or containers like Docker containers with Linux containers, or Linux or Windows containers, or static apps. In our case, it's our code. If we containerize your application, you can select this one. Select the runtime stack, your project stack of it. Like it's a .NET based application, we can select any of these. It's a ASP.NET based application, and in a Java, Node, PHP, and Python versions available. I'm showing an example with Node.js project. So Node.js 20 is the latest version available. Select that, and select a Windows or Linux, anything. I choose Windows, region of it, and make it default by default, all these things, and create a tree. We can implement, we can modify all these changes in later to that, later to creation of this application. Just by default, implement with a basic one. I create it. Web server is spinning up. It's going to deploy it. Yeah, my resource is deployed. When I saw my web apps, My web app name is your SE project name, and I can able to access this web app web server with this URL. When I copy it, even when I open it in incognito or in a different mobile or in a some other computer, I can able to access the default web page. So I need to later modify, deploy my changes with this one to my application, like what you did in a, like what we did in a production environment in previously, okay, like that. To make it done, we need to connect this one first. Connect this website with a GitHub port. To make it done, we need to first go to this configurations part. And in a configuration, we have different configuration options available. Make especially general settings. Go to the general settings. And here we need to specify the authentication as a basic authentication. Select the SCM basic authentication. So with this basic authentication, it will create a publish token. So it will connect with Azure DevOps. GitHub with the Azure portal. So select that one and enable this FTP authentication. In a FTP, I'm allowing all the ports. In HTTP, I can modify this with a 2.0 version. So only one TCP connection will establish. And yeah, I on this WebSockets. I run with the HTTPS to save our application. If I check it disable, my application will redirect with HTTP only. So HTTPS. I'll take the latest version. I will check with the latest version only. Okay, it all good. Yeah, save the changes. Changes are updated. Then I go to the main page and browse with my application. Okay, it's working as the previous version. And after connecting, after providing the configurations, we need to go to the deployment center. And in deployment center, we need to connect our Azure portal with project in a GitHub. Like we have multiple repositories, right? We need to connect with one of the project that we wanted to automate our application. Like if it's the case, this one, I need to connect this, I need to select this in this portal. Like in a source part, I need to specify whether I need to connect with the GitHub or Bitbucket or local or Azure reports or any other external repositories. In our case, it's GitHub. And in GitHub, I already signed in with my application with the previous one. So it's showing as default. If I wanted to change, yeah, I can change it. Like in next to that, I need to specify the organization name, Previn, and repository. These are all the repositories I have in my application, in my GitHub. Uh, like in our case, with that one, this is the previous one example project. You need to select your own project and project and branch. Which branch you need to show it into that. As of now, I have only one branch available in this one. Sorry, I selected this project, this sample project. And in sample project, I have only one branch, which is me. If I add some more branches, that will show us in this portal. So I will trigger this branch is enough. Here it was asking that you wanted to add one more workflow or use an available workflow. What I prefer is I will create a one more workflow and copy the code and add it in the existing workflow to avoid impacting to the existing workflows. So I create one more workflow and my runtime tag is node. So I select basic authentication. You don't need to specify username and password while pushing the code from GitHub. So that's it. It will create a workflow automatically. We need to modify it. When I save the changes, it's connected to the project. We can see it from overview section. In a overview, I will refresh this one. Yeah, when I refresh it, it shows our project. Yeah. So it shows our project. When we move back to our project, in a project session, we have workflows. Just now a new workflow got created with the name of a main file. And is here, this is the workflow which we are created from the portal itself. We need to modify it according to our requirement. Along with that, here it was connected with some secrets, right? This secret is automatically created when I added it because of the basic authentication. And in a secret session action, previously it was 3. One is for test, production, and development. Now, recently in a 1 minute ago, it got created this one. Okay, for our pipeline connection. Yeah, this is the pipeline. You need to edit the pipeline according to your requirement. Provide your runtime stack. And I was removing these test cases, excluding the test cases because I didn't write any test cases to check it. If I add it, it will be failed because I didn't add any test terms in a test application, sample application. And install the packages and build the code. Publish the artifacts, and I need to specify the path. Like it's in a root directory did slash some other the project name which I specified. This name. If we wanted to change the path, you can modify it in an app setting JSON, angular.json. In an angular.json, at the architecture in a build part, you need to change this one. By default, it's created with this one. If you wanted to change any customization, you need it in Angular application, you can specify it. Maybe it's similar for the React-based applications also. Okay. And this slash that path. This is the same name that they did this name. Yeah. Up to this, it's built it and saved it in path. Get the path and saved it in this web job. After that, a deployment will start. And in the deployment, I will specify this as UAT any sub branch. And in a needs, I can specify that after testing, I need to deploy to the UAT, right? As of now, these are in separate pipeline. I can copy the code and add it into my existing pipeline when I need it, if I need it. Okay. Next in step section, you need to make sure that this name should be same as your app service name. Okay. After modifying all these things, you can save the pipeline. Don't use this naming conventions, specify it.
నేను ఇంకా మా వీడియో చేశాడు మరి.
Yeah, I mentioned the title of it, and when commit the changes, a new commit got created. Once the commit got created, either from the local or in a GitHub, a pipeline is triggered. Here we have previous pipeline and newly created pipeline. In a newly created pipeline, it consists of only build and deploy. I am not integrated with the previous version, just to demonstrate the example of it. So it will trigger the build, and after that run, then it will reflects our changes to the this URL, live URL. Yeah, it successfully built and deployed changes. And my application serves in this URL, which is your deploy. When I browse this one, my changes are reflected in that URL. Like in here, your SC project, when I refresh it, it's got automatically triggered. The code that I have in my project. Yeah. And in some cases, if we have some routing URLs like a slash dashboard or slash login, you need to add some more functionality in our code. Like you need to add web jobs to the, like you need to have, you need to write this web.config. There is, I don't have this in this one. In some other project I created. This one. This is also other example of Angular project. In an Angular project, you need to write this web.config file. It's not pre-configured. You need to write it within the same directory of your index page of your website. Every website have an index page. Web application have index page. Default landing page where you configured all your routes. Okay, a header and body and all the scripts and basic routing URLs and CDN files. All these files in the index. So within the same directory, you need to specify this file. you can copy and reuse this file also. Okay. Or else, if it's in a different directory, you need to specify the path of it. This says that if a request comes from other than this URL or any other URL like this URL, it need to be routed with that default main template, which is index template. It specifies that and tells that it also allows CSV files and other file extensions. You can specify it based on your needs if it's blocked by the web server. All the web configuration. And with this, you can include or customize your application with XSS protection like and some redirection with the HTTP protocols, enabled or disabled. You can reuse this one. Mainly, our action is this one. Okay. Whatever the path it have propagated with /URL/login or /dashboard, anything which matches, it will perform an action to redirect with this, redirect to this index HTML. Okay, like in that. Some other application, basic application. Like here I have a slash attribute. Even when I refresh it, my application still works without failure. Okay, only if I add this web config. That's all about the demo. In this video, you understand about the GitHub, DevOps, as well as what we are expecting in a sprint 3. At least one production slot we are expecting in a live environment, which can be automated with DevOps pipeline. So that's all about this video. Implement this pipeline in your own project. If you found any errors or any need assistance, come to me in my office hours. Okay. Thank you for participating in this video. Thank you all.